Welcome back, brothers and sisters. If you did not know, Critical Role is starting a new 8-part miniseries campaign this week to coincide with the launch of their new RPG system, Daggerheart. And I have a lot of thoughts about it. I'm very excited about it, and I wanted to share all of this with you in today's RPG sermon. So don't forget to pay your hobby tithing, leave a like, and let us pray. Let's start with an overview of what this campaign is going to be. Age of Umbra is an 8-part Daggerheart miniseries from Critical Role, all about dark survival fantasy, debuting May 29th on Beacon, Twitch, and YouTube. Set in the Halcyon Domain, a world abandoned by gods and consumed by darkness, the series begins by following 5 people from the isolated community of Desperlock as they fight to protect their own in the face of rising horrors. The Halcyon Domain is a lethal, foreboding land where the souls of the dead are cursed to return as twisted, nightmarish forms. A dark, ethereal mass known as the Umbra roams and holds these fiendish monstrosities, further corrupting anything it touches. Sacred pyres keep the corruption at bay, and small communities endure through cooperation. Out in the beyond, whispers speak of ancient secrets and powers, wanderers of a lost age, ready for discovery to those brave enough or foolish enough to seek them. Game Master Matthew Mercer leads fellow Critical Role co-founders Ashley Johnson, Laura Bailey, Liam O'Brien, Marisha Ray, Sam Regal, Taliesin Jaffe, and Travis Willingham in a high-stakes actual play exploring hope, sacrifice, and survival in a world where death is only the beginning. And that's all we really know about the campaign so far. They are releasing Session 0 this week, where we're going to watch 5 of the cast members make their character, and something it notes is that the characters are going to work with Matt to sort of build the campaign setting out together, or at least contribute ideas. That seems to be a focal point of the Daggerheart rules, like you are cooperatively building the world, not just the story, which I think is really cool, and I'm very excited and eager to see how they do that. What does that look like? Is there a system in place to kind of make that all easy for the Game Master to run? Or is it sort of a, you guys are meant to do this together, go for it, go crazy with it. So I want to see that, but also just going off of the pitch and the images we have seen for the campaign, I'm wondering, what exactly is the Umbra? Like, is it a giant monster, sort of like a Tarrasque equivalent of just the shadow demon that is sweeping across the land? Or is it more of a environmental sort of thing, like when the shadows roll in after the sun sets? Is that the Umbra? Is it like a mist that you can get trapped in and die in and turn into a monster? I'm interested to see more about that. When I first saw the picture, I thought, oh my god, that is the Umbra, this like big halo hooded looking statue thing walking around. Like, that's really cool looking. But from a little more research, I realized that's just a ruin that the characters are standing up on. So no idea what the Umbra is, but the pyres are also a really interesting theme in this setting, where humanity, what is left of it, is scattered around and hobbled around these big burning pyres they keep lit that keeps the Umbra at bay. Lots of questions in my head about that. Are they literally just big bonfires that when they burn, the light itself is enough to keep the Umbra at bay? Or if it really is wanting to be a grimdark setting, which I will note, the rulebook comes with several different little micro settings, which I think is so cool. But in this setting, the Age of Umbra, it's meant to be very grimdark. Do these pyres require some sort of sacrifice to be burned, or in order to keep them lit? Something I talked about on stream with some of the other members of our RPG cult was, what if, because in this setting it says when you die, your soul becomes a monster, because in the setting the gods have abandoned it. What if a soul that willingly burns itself upon a pyre not only keeps it lit and keeps the monsters in the Umbra at bay, but it also prevents their soul from ever becoming a monster? So you have to be willing to make a sacrifice, and you have to have a soul clean and worthy enough to be burned on the pyre to keep it lit. That's where my mind went with how the pyre mechanic could maybe work, but I have no idea. I'm excited to learn more about what these pyres are and how they actually work for the game. And then another thing was this survival aspect. It's noted just at the end, but it talks about how it's a game about like hope and keeping the light lit or something, and survival. And I'm wondering if in this setting where humanity is kind of just clinging to survival in these little ruins, in these little communities that are super sparse from each other, how literal is it with survival? Does that mean you literally have like mechanics in this setting where you're needing to go out and do things to keep the people fed and keep the pyre burning? Is it that literal with survival? Or is it more of the like, oh, just survive fights with these monster demon things, just don't die? That's what they mean by survival. So excited to see what sort of answers I get for all of those questions. But thankfully I didn't have to wait too long to get answers to some of my other questions, because there was actually a very in-depth look at this campaign and this rule set that came from GameInformer. So we'll take a look at that now. The GameInformer exclusive deep dive into Daggerheart came from Mac Miller, who sat down with Spencer Stark, the lead game designer for Daggerheart, and it was basically broken into two parts. One was a gallery of images from the Daggerheart rulebook, as well as a 2-page spread peek at the Age of Umbra setting. And then the second part was an interview where they more talked about like what makes Daggerheart unique, what's cool, what is it about, tell me about this 2D12 system that you guys use and stuff like that. So on the primer side of things in the artwork, there was some really cool stuff that you were able to pull out of there. Most of it was about what, like a full page of text about what is the Age of Umbra, what are the events that led to the creation of this setting, which was basically the God King Ophidius basically conspired against the gods who put him in the mantle of the God King and did something to maybe usurp their power. It doesn't specify what it is he did, but it was some sort of heresy that caused the gods to destroy the world or leave it for ruin and abandon it. And now it is just slowly falling into entropy, into darkness and despair, into ruin, which totally fits the Dark Soulsy, grimdark sort of vibe that they are pitching the Age of Umbra to be. And if you have followed my channel at all or have listened to any of my own world building, you know that I'm like, hell yeah, I'm all in on that sort of thing. So it definitely is fitting that vibe. It told us about how the Umbra is, it kind of answered one of my questions I mentioned before. It is a giant shadow monster made from the souls that have been consumed by the Umbra, because it tells you in this primer, when you die, your soul just becomes part of the Umbra. It just becomes an evil thing. So it'll be interesting to see in the campaign if a character dies, which this is Critical Role we're talking about, so who knows if that'll happen, right? But if a character dies, what does that process of joining the Umbra look like? Or how do you save someone from the Umbra? Or what sort of relics do you need to go seek out in this dying world to try and save a companion? So that was some interesting lore to learn about. The God King Ophidius sort of vibe was really giving me like 40k God Emperor vibes, which I'm like, that's really cool. So I enjoyed that. The second spread was more information about some of the settlement locations that are in the Age of Umbra setting. That was cool. I honestly would have preferred in this like preview to see more of some of the mechanical rules that will make the Age of Umbra setting feel different than the others, rather than just like, okay, here's a bunch of the settlements here. But one thing that stood out to me that I was really excited to see was for each settlement where your players might, or where the players' characters would come from, they included a list of like 3 questions that you're meant to ask the player, at least one of them, to help flesh out the character's backstory and connect it to that specific settlement. And it even says like, pick one and ask it during your session 0. And I'm like, oh, that is so cool to see in a setting book with actionable tips and advice to help your DM, help you as a DM run this group and get your players invested in the setting and have these narrative threads that you can start pulling at during your sessions. I thought that was great design. Really excited about that. Want to see more of that in other books. But besides that, I'm lying. There was one other really cool thing in the 2 spread preview they showed off. It was back at the beginning. They had this little section where it would tell you, what did they call it? They call it touchstones. That's what it was. Touchstones, which were basically other mediums or other media that if you like that, then you'll like this setting. So for Age of Umbra, obviously it was like, if you like Elden Ring, if you like Dark Souls, if you like, I can't remember some of the others, but it basically, it just put it right out there, this sort of like meta knowledge of, hey, this is a game. These are other games or movies that if you've read or watched or whatever, this stuff, you're probably going to enjoy this. And I just loved it. I loved how open it was. It wasn't trying to like maintain this illusion or the display of like, this is an RPG and it lives in its entirely own little microcosm universe, and we're only going to reference this book and try and convey all of the information we can through it. I like that they were just like, oh yeah, there's other things that exist outside of this game. Bring that in to your game prep to make it feel cooler and really convey the themes and tones of this setting that it's all about. Thought that was awesome. So that's another thing I want to see in other systems. So that was it for the 2-page primer. On the interview side of things, I'll be honest, reading through the questions and the answers, it was kind of a lot of like, someone in the stream referenced it as PR talk. It's like, okay, you're giving me answers, but you're not really giving me a lot of actual information. Like they asked, tell me about this 2d12 system that you guys use. And it's like, oh yeah, you roll 2d12, and depending on the roll, you might get a like, it's like the hope and the fear dice. And you could get like a good result, but maybe with a little bad thing that happens in addition to it, or a bad result, but a little good thing that sort of happens with it. And I left it kind of being like, okay, so it's basically just like an oracle mechanic from a lot of solo RPGs. And if you're not familiar with that, an oracle mechanic is like, I pose a question, I roll this d6, and it might be a yes and, yes no, no and, no but, that sort of a deal. And I thought that was cool. That's interesting. An oracle sort of system gives the GM a little more to go off of whenever they're making decisions about what's happening in the game, some sort of direction to make things interesting. It helps keep things from getting stagnant. What I'm cautiously pondering about when it comes to this in a group RPG is, can you get through that quickly? If every time there's a check that involves 2d12 and you need to consult this oracle, now you have like this little extra thing on every single turn that you're needing to make these decisions about, that I could see it being a lot easier and quicker to do that solo than in a group setting. So I'll be curious to see how they encourage or instruct GMs to handle the use of this hope and fear dice mechanic, because it does sound like it could be a little, I don't know, a little clunky, but I hope not, because I think oracles are really cool. And then the other things that they asked questions about were like, tell me about the cards. Are they required? And the answer was a little unfortunately like, oh no, the cards are just there if you want them to kind of help you with managing the different abilities and gear your characters have. And what me and everybody on the stream agreed on was like, I kind of wish it was more of like all in on the cards. Like if that's going to be a part of the game, be like, no, the cards are sweet. They're a big part of what makes our gameplay unique. The way you throw them out on the table, the way you can swap them into the deck to get other things. And maybe that's just me being like, I don't really know the rules system enough, and I'm just like, no, cards are sick. I want to see more of it. But that seems to be the direction they're going. Not super required, but they're just there to add fun. And then they asked about these other campaign settings. Are there more besides the Age of Umbra? Because as I kept reading into Age of Umbra and getting excited for this new campaign, I had to remind myself, oh yeah, that's not Daggerheart. There's a lot more to it. And there are 8 little micro settings in this rulebook that you can take and use to sort of inspire your next adventure. So Age of Umbra is the grimdark one, but then they also had one that was for, I can't remember the names of them, but there was one that was all about cooking your monsters. So it was inspired by like Delicious in Dungeon or whatever that anime was. There was another one that was more like fey and whimsical themed, and I just like that. I can't remember these exact other settings. I'm excited to get my copy of the book and read through them, but a rule book that gives you setting lore information, help you run an adventure is great. One that gives you 8 and they're all totally different and have their own mechanical features that makes playing in each one feel different is probably one of the things I've been most excited about to read in a rulebook in a long, long time. So really excited to learn more about that. I've got this deep dive from GameInformer linked down below. You should go check that out because you can read through that 2-page primer and see all the other art and some of these other questions that were asked. But yeah, it all just got me really pumped. So why am I so excited about Age of Umbra and this new Critical Role campaign and Daggerheart? Well, to be honest, I'm excited because I feel like it's one of the first things in at least the past several months that I feel like I can be excited about in the RPG hobby. I unfortunately feel like the majority of our hobby right now is just a bunch of just hate. I feel like so many of the videos I see are just like, this is the thing that Wizards of the Coast did wrong this time. Not that they didn't do something wrong. Like the newest drama I saw was like their Baldur's Gate minis that they sold for $50 or whatever looked like garbage, which they always have looked like garbage. But like that was the new big thing that I was seeing in the headlines. I'm like, okay, another thing to be bummed about. Ugh, now what? Or like, oh, what's the disappointing thing from 5e, the new rules? Or I don't know. There just hasn't been a lot that I've been excited about. And I kind of fell off Critical Role during Campaign 2. I didn't even watch Campaign 3. And so over the weekend, I just was feeling compelled of like, you know what? I want to be excited about something in the RPG hobby. I want there to be a thing that not only I can get invested in, but I can try and get other people invested in too. And this new little 8-part miniseries campaign that is kicking off the launch of a new rule set that might be able to rival the death grip that 5e has over the hobby, why wouldn't I want to be excited about that? And I like Critical Role. I like all of their acting abilities. I like the stories they tell. The Campaign 3 just wasn't doing it for me. It was really leaning a lot into the previous lore from like campaign 1 and campaign 2, and it was just, I just had not followed along enough to really be invested. But something that is only 8 episodes long, I can binge that. I can get excited about that. I can care about those characters and tune in for every episode. So that's what I'm planning to do. And I'm even going to be doing some watch party streams where basically after the Thursday episode goes up, Friday morning we'll jump on a stream and talk about what happened in the episode, and I'll do that for all of them. So you should go tune into that with me, and let's all be excited about something. I would love to see a little more. I don't even want it to be like, let's have more positivity in the RPG hobby. It's not even about the positivity. It's just like, are we having fun here? And if we're not having fun, let's do something about it. Let's not all live in our little insular campaign worlds where we only care about the thing that's happening in our group and the prep we're doing for our session. That is extremely important. But if we are not engaging with the wider hobby and consuming other parts of it, and being critical of it, but not just as like a hater, but also like, I'm invested in the hobby as a whole, so I'm going to put some time into other things. Like, that's what will, I think, bring the enthusiasm levels back up, which I think this hobby desperately needs right now, because we all know Wizards of the Coast is not incentivized to save the heart of the hobby. They're incentivized to save its bottom line, but the beating heart, that's us. And so that's why I'm excited about this. I'm coming back to a group that I haven't watched in a long time. I'm expecting good things. There's a new rule book that I can go get that I think sounds really fun. I might even try running some games with it. Who knows? Or at the very least, I'll adapt the things I like and put it into my 5e campaign, right? Nothing wrong with doing that. So I would be really excited to hear from you all down in the comments. What are your thoughts on this? Do you even care about Daggerheart? Do you care about this new campaign? Are you going to be watching it along with me? All of that sort of stuff. Share it down in the comments. Now, if at the end of this video you're thinking, well, I also want to be really enthusiastic about the hobby, I want to be invested, then one way you could do that is to go follow the church's Patreon. You can do that for free, and on most weekdays I am releasing the Morning Ritual RPG hobby blog, where I'm either sharing some work in progress of the different RPG scripture I've been preparing, random tables, or updates on the month zine. So I've been sharing a lot about the Wretched Tropics and how we've been developing that, so you can keep up to date on that. I share videos or links to things like this, what I'm talking about in this video, so you can kind of be in the loop about what we're talking about on the channel. And if you want to be a Tithe paying member for $3 a month, you get to download not just that month's zine, but you also can go back and have access to everything that I've published. The most recent zine was the Traveling NPC zine, which has 10 random tables that help you generate traveling merchants, roadside rests where you might meet these merchants, dangerous roads that they're traveling on. One of the first pages is just a 3d8 traveling NPC generator, so you can get that for $3, as well as a ton of other prep. So plenty of stuff there. It's all system agnostic, so you can use it in whatever system you're running, be that 5e or Morkborg or Daggerheart. But speaking of the patrons, I want to give a big thanks to some of my higher tiered members, because you guys are really the ones who are helping me keep my bills paid, keep me and Mother Doom fed, and I'm just very grateful for your support, especially in times like these. So that's why I want to say all of these things in their unholy names. Amen.